for joining us again tonight. Every time we start one of these, I long for the days where we can be back in the good old comfortable LGI and be able to hang out together. So hopefully in August, we're continuing to monitor the state guidance on what is allowed as we move from yellow to green to beyond green. I guess it's a dark shade of green we move to after that, I'm not sure. In terms of what that will look like. So just want to remind everyone that as the meeting is progressing, unless you are a presenter, if you would stay muted. If you are a board member and would like to comment, then just unmute. We will look for those signals. If not, just give us a little wave and then the chair or myself will recognize you for comment. Those members of the community that are here, there will be public comment times. When those times are introduced, if you would like to make a comment, we would ask that you unmute at that point and just say, I'd like to make a comment. The chair will recognize you, then you will give your name and where you live within the district, and you'll have the 3 minutes to make a public comment if you so wish. So at this time, I would just like to make a statement before we begin the meetings tonight. I would appreciate that. So before we begin our committee work this evening, I would like to speak briefly about the past week. Since my email last Monday regarding the tragic death of George Floyd and the Penridge School District's commitment to be part of the needed improvement, this community and indeed our entire world has continued to discuss and learn about the experiences of persons of color. I have been privileged and have had multiple emails and conversations with students, parents, community members, and Penridge staff over the past weeks. And I'm sure each of you have done the same. I'm proud that the common theme in all these conversations has been about what we can do to support our families, to listen to our students, and to offer ideas on how best to train and educate our students, staff, and the entire Penridge community. On behalf of the school board and the Penridge School District, we remain fully committed to seek change and provide improvements in the areas of diversity and equity. The district's diversity and equity work group was formed 2 years ago as an outgrowth of our most recent comprehensive planning and will continue to lead our initiatives through the summer and into next year. This group has already delivered multiple diversity trainings to all administrators, is planning a training in November for all professional and support staff, has discussed educational opportunities for our students, looked to increase the diversity of candidates that are considered for all positions, and has examined our curriculum for diversity of content, characters, and authorship. We are proud of this work, but we understand that the work is not finished. We will expand this work group to include student and parent participation as we move into the next school year. We will continue to improve through the input and ideas from all members of the Penridge community. And I will continue to provide additional updates as we plan our goals for the start of the 2020-2021 school year. Thank you. You're on mute, Ms. Banis-Clemens.
Sorry, I forgot. Thank you, Dr. Bolton. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? I don't see anyone unmuting.
I would agree.
Okay, then we'll move on to the agenda. Let me just switch screens here. Sorry, I lost my screen when I was trying to unmute myself.
You could hand it over to Mr. Dalbert for the general fund budget presentation.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Dr. Bolton, could you allow me to share?
Yeah, Mrs. Miller, could you let Mr. Dalbert share his screen, please?
Okay. Try that again. Oops. Oh, here's screen share. Are you seeing it, the budget presentation?
We
Yeah.
are.
We see.
Oh, I
Oh,
wonder,
it just disappeared.
it disappeared?
Yes.
Now did it come up?
No.
All right, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
Mr. Daubert, when you share, there it is. There it is. Now you just have to go into your slideshow. There you
Okay.
go.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay. I'll just, I just wanted to start with the general fund budget tonight. We do have the information on the agenda about the amount of the general fund budget and so forth, and we'll talk about that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening locally. We're following the numbers for unemployment and our local tax collections. So I want to give you a bit of an update at this time of what we've been seeing over the last month or so since we've looked at the numbers last. So, and then I also want to go through with you what came out of the state budget last week. So those are the two major things that I want to walk through here tonight before we go back to the agenda. The unemployment claims for the county, if you remember back at the end of April or beginning of May, we reported claim information from March 1st through April 21st. And the county had about 53,000 cases, and about 3,700 of those cases were within the zip codes that attend our school district. We were able to go back in, we were able to receive some updated information through the IU to Dr. Bolton, which he shared with me. And they gave us the information from March 1st through May 31st. The unemployment cases are over 68,000 in Bucks County. About 4,700 of those cases are from zip codes that attend the school district. And what we've seen in that time period was about a 75% drop for new cases in the school district, which is a good sign. The next slide is a graph of the new unemployment cases in Bucks County by March. In February, there was 1,197 cases. That jumped to almost 24,000 cases in March, and then jumped again to another 36,000 cases in April. And in May, the new cases dropped down to just under 8,000. So again, hopefully we're seeing this shows us a change in the tide of what's happening in our county and hopefully in our school district. The next slide is information from the state website that shows continued unemployment claims in Bucks County. So this is not just the new claims, this is actually the claims that are on a continual basis. And you can see that peaked out right around the beginning of May at over 61,000 cases. And we have been seeing a steady decline through May down to 39,000 cases on May 23rd. But for some reason, that number spiked back up to 46,000 for the week ending May 30th. It really is a little bit confusing because it doesn't correlate back to the actual new cases, because there were not that many new cases in Bucks County between May 23rd and May 30th. So I'm not sure what exactly that tells us, but we'll continue to watch those numbers each week and see. Hopefully they will continue to go down. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was give you a little bit of an update on the local revenue. The highlighted revenues sources are the four that I shared with you a month or so ago that I had the most concern about for this fiscal year. And the the first column is our 1920 budget, and then what our year-end projections were without the pandemic. I thought we were, heading in this direction. What we thought our projections were at the end of April, and now at the end of May, taking a look at the numbers after we received another month of revenue, and doing a projection where we think we'll be after the next 2 months, really June, and then the month of July is really a kind of a continuation of the previous month, where we're collecting money that belongs in the 1920 fiscal year. I was surprised at the earned income tax revenue in May. Came out better than I thought. As far as earned income tax, at the end of February, the district was 3.12% above prior year, which was a nice growth year over year. And when we get into March, what I saw was about a 1.61% reduction from March of 19 to March of 20. So the gains started to cease. In April, we collected, our collections were down 34.5% from April of 2019 to April of 2020. And for some good news, in May, our collections were only down 10.51% from May of 19 to May of 20. So hopefully that is good news that will continue forward for us as we finish out the rest of the year, and then hopefully into next year, and things continue to improve. So at this point, we went from being a year-to-date ahead 3.12% to actually year-to-date down 1.73% from last year. And so the other lines, the real estate transfer tax line, it had a good month of May. We received about $150,000 on that line item, which I was surprised, and hopefully that will continue. The delinquent tax collections are down considerably, and I think that will continue until everything comes back. I think that will probably be our hardest line item to get back. And our interest income is also continues to be lower than what we would have hoped it would be, if the pandemic hadn't happened. So my projection there is now about $1.22 million of revenue for the rest of the year. I'm projecting our first line item, our current real estate tax, to be down a little bit compared to what I thought it would be last month. And really that is because the delinquent collections that are in the current year, for the current year taxes, we place in the current year's real estate revenue, and those numbers are down. So that's why I'm thinking that our current real estate tax number is going to be down compared to where I thought it would be last year. Overall, still looking at about $800,000 deficit in total local revenues for this year. Fairly close to the estimate I had last month. So again, we'll continue to watch it and show you the numbers as we go through the rest of the summer here, and see where we end up. The state revenues should be fine. As you know, the Act 13 law that was passed at the beginning of the pandemic makes sure that we will receive all the state revenue that we should have received. So that is not a concern at this time. And also the federal revenue is not a concern at this time. But those revenues could become a concern in next fiscal year and the year after, depending on what the fiscal state of the state's economy is. Now looking at looking at the state budget for 2021. It was done before June, which is a miracle in itself. The budget was passed for $25 billion. It is a 5-month stopgap budget. The legislators will have to come back in November after the election and finish the budget. About half the funding in the $25 billion budget is for education. K-12 is the only area that received 12 months of funding. So unless something is added later on in November, we should be fine as far as the state budget. We know what we're going to get. And there was a big concern about the state was going to take federal dollars and supplant them into their budget and use those dollars to pay, to fund school districts. And they did not do that, which was a great surprise and also a very good move. As far as our basic ed funding, which is the BEF, it's level funded for 1920. So what we're getting this year is exactly what we're going to get next year. And it's $11.4 million. The special education funding is also level funded. So again, what we got or we're scheduled to get this year is what we're going to get next year. Other things in the state budget for education, so the security line item is still being folded into the basic ed funding. That's a change they made last year. The Ready to Learn block grant is also level funded, and that's been level funded for a number of years, so that's not a surprise. The state did put money in to make sure that the districts are reimbursed for the state share of the retirement payments, which is good. Another line item that's level funded is the CTC subsidy. And a great surprise to many is that the state actually increased funding in transportation. This is a line item for the last 4 or 5 years that has been level funded. And it's a line item that is a reimbursement due to school districts based on formula. And the state has just basically failed to fund that at what the needed amount has been for, like I said, 3, 4, 5 years. So they realized the problem and they actually added money into the transportation line item in order to attempt to fully fund that for the rest of 1920 and 2021, which is, again, it was a big surprise and it's very welcome. So as far as federal funding, there's been some action here in the last month or two since we went into this, the situation we're in. There's 2 pieces out of the CARES Act that are coming to school districts. The first piece is the ESSER funding, and that funding is running through the Title I program and the Title I allocations. Our allocation is just over $472,000 for that line item. That program, Tony is working on currently applying for that through the Title I grant program. And our goal is to use those dollars to help fund the missing local revenue for next year. So the money came with no strings as far as, well, it did come with some things that we were allowed to use it for, but we were also allowed to use it to make up for our lost revenues, which was a nice thing that they're allowing us to do. The second part of the federal funding is the CARES Act funding. This money will run through, it's a part of the school code bill, but it'll run through the PCCD grant, which is the security grant that the district has received $35,000 or $45,000 the last 2 years. The state actually took that grant and replaced it with this CARES Act grant. And the Penridge will receive just over $600,000 in that funding. And I'll show you in a little bit further here what we can use that money for. The CARES Act, the ESSER funding, like I said, it's running through the Title I. It was about $400 million to go to school districts, another $71 million to charter schools. Excuse me. Again, those applications are running through the PDE grant system, and Tony's working on that as we speak. and that money can begin to flow immediately. The safety and security funding grant, the second one we talked about, there's about 175 million going to school districts, 25 million going to charter schools, IUs, and tech schools. School districts receive 120,000 plus an amount based on our enrollment. And then charter schools, IUs, and the tech schools receive 90,000. Again, this is running through the PCCD Safety and Security Grant. And it came through the school code. And that funding, that grant should open here shortly. It's to be open by June 20th, but hopefully it'll open before that. We will go in and apply for that grant, and the funding for that program should start to run by July 15th. So again, that's helpful to us. And the CARES Act money that we just talked about, these are the things we're allowed to use the money for: purchasing cleaning and sanitizing supplies, training and PD on sanitization and mitigation, purchasing equipment, including PPE, thermometers, infrared cameras, any modifications that we have to do to areas to mitigate any spread of the virus, provide any type of mental health services and support for students affected by COVID-19. We could purchase technology with it for our distance learning, and really a catch-all any other health or safety program items or services necessary to address COVID-19. So that is the federal money that we know of at this point that's coming through the CARES grant or the CARES Act, coming down to school districts. So is there any questions on any of that information?
Mr. Dahlberg, is it possible for you to enlarge that slideshow so I can see it a little better? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It looks like it's minimized and you don't have it in slideshow.
Right.
Sorry. It'd just be easier for me to see.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Okay. Can I send it to you? I'll send it to you. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Dahlberg, am I remembering correctly that as part of the ESSER grant, there is about $10,000 that goes to our non-public schools, and so our
Yes.
number will be just about $10,000 less than the 427 you stated. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, it's actually $8,898 of our $472,000 go to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from anyone? No? Okay, next, levying taxes.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the leveling of taxes under item number 2 with the actual budget. The real estate millage is 135.2555 mils. Again, that's the same number that has been in place for 4 years. There will be no tax increase this year as far as real estate taxes or any other tax. And number 3, the other taxes, which we levy each year, the 1% earned income tax, the 0.5% real estate transfer tax, and the $5 local service tax is our portion of that tax that's administered normally at, I believe, $52. So those are the tax line items.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is the homestead and farmstead exclusion.
Yes, the homestead farmstead exclusion this year, the properties, number of total properties for homestead is 11,935 this year. For farmstead, 127. The total number of properties are within a couple numbers of last year. It's very close. The actual amount of money available this year is $2,506,372, which is up a few $1,000, which ends up being a assessed value reduction on the property tax bill of $1,520 of assessed value, which in turn equates to a reduction of taxes of $205.59. So this is another line item that we were very worried about 2 weeks ago when the Secretary of Budget came out and said that the millions of dollars that were in place for this program were actually only half of what she had certified. And actually what happened was in the budget process, the state decided to take a chunk of the CARES Act money that was controlled by the state and put into this program for this year in order to fund this fully, so that we could give the homestead farmstead reductions of what was originally promised. And this money again comes from the casinos, the gambling. So it took a large hit with the closure of the casinos, and we're going to have to we'll be watching this line item throughout the next year. Hopefully it will recover to the point that next year when we're having this discussion, there will be money there at the state level to make the homestead farmstead exemption. So, okay.
Any questions or comments on that? No? Okay. The installment dates are being set at August 31st, October 31st, and December 15th.
Yes, and they're consistent each year.
Okay. Commitment of funds.
Yes, the commitment of funds for the fund balances, the board has to set these before June 30th of each year, or at least put a plan in place to what you want the numbers to be. So A and B are the same as last year, and we've had those numbers the same for a number of years. C is where item C is actually the change this year, and I want to explain to you what my and Dr. Bolton's suggestion is for this item. This item is usually says that the end of year excess of revenue over expenditures will be transferred to capital projects fund, and so and then that would set the fund balances. Sorry, but what we're proposing this year, and if the board agrees, is that any excess revenues over expenditures for the fiscal year end 2020, which is the year we're in, will be reserved to offset any excess of expenditures over revenue for fiscal year 2021. So we're trying to put aside any positive we come out with at the end of this year and put it aside in case we have we don't get the recovery that we're hoping for next year, and we have a loss next year.
Yeah, that's a great way to give us some more flexibility in this this situation that's really up in the air. So I think it's a great idea. Does anyone have any comments or questions about this? Everybody's okay with it? Good. Okay.
One other point, Mrs. Banis-Clements, is that if we get to next year and we don't need that, the board can simply say, okay, now we want to do X, Y, or Z with that money, and you choose what you want to do with it. Either you put it in capital projects, you reserve it for something else you'd like to reserve it for, but we would just make the decision each year as we go.
So it's easier to commit money than it is to pull money out of somewhere you've already committed it, right? It's basically.
Right.
Okay, next is the insurance proposal.
Okay, so our renewal quotes from our insurance agent came in, and the quotes for each individual insurance package are there for you with comparisons to last year's numbers. You'll see that the insurance, or the property, the general liability and the property and the auto liability is the one that has increased the most. And it's driven by our values. We have an appraisal done every 2 years, which then our insurance value is set at. So our insurance value has to be enough to replace everything in the school district if we lost everything. So we have to insure the value of all of our properties, and all of our assets within those properties. So that's really, it's our values of all of our properties, which is driving that increase in our property insurance and our liability and our auto liability. Plus, we also, each year when we replace 10 very old vehicles with 10 brand new vehicles, again, that drives an increase in our insurance rates. Is just like when at home we buy a new car, get rid of an old car, it generally makes our auto insurance go up. The rest of the programs are fairly right in line with the last year's premium rates. The other one is the leader's liability. It's up a little bit. And again, things are being driven by the potential impact of what's happening with COVID and education and so forth. And the actual market expects more claims coming at school districts in the future. So, and I will tell you that the total of the programs are about $1,000 less than the total of what we budgeted for all the programs. So we're within what we budgeted this year. With the student accident program, we're going to get a credit back of about $5,250 right off of that $36,750 premium. It'll be reduced for credit because we had really no students on campus for the last 3 months. And we are also expecting a credit to come back for our auto insurance from the middle of March through the end of the school year. But I don't have a number on that for you yet, but that credit is going to come back either as a credit to next year's premium or to a check or a check back to us. When I met with our brokers, they weren't sure how the company was going to send that money back to us yet. So, but that is good news.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone on any of these? No?
Yeah, actually, sorry, it took me a while to unmute. I just wanted to, Sean, did you get any more information about whether or not the state was going to consider extending the discount deadlines and payment deadlines? I'm sorry to go back, but I couldn't get you before you moved on.
No, that's okay. There are two bills at the state level right now. There's a House bill and there's a Senate bill. PASBO, our professional organization, has been watching this and has been in touch every day with folks in the legislature about these two issues or about these two bills, because it's so very important that the state makes some type of determination and decision, because next week when we pass our budget, we need to send our tax bills to the printer, because our tax bills are due out to our taxpayers July 1st. So the two bills at the state level, the House bill has requirements in it that require school boards to make these changes, both in the extension of the discount period and the extension of the face value, which would eliminate the penalty period. Like I said, those are required, but there's also some other information in that bill that is causing it to hang up, some connections to some other things that some folks apparently don't like. The Senate bill actually gives school districts an option of whether they want to make changes or not. It seems to be a little bit, apparently it seems to be a little bit more palatable at the state level. It doesn't have some of the things in it that the House bill has that some folks in Harrisburg don't like. But the hard part is right now is that no one seems to know if either bill is going to move on the floor, and if they do, when they'll move. So it's putting school boards really between a rock and a hard place. PASBO said this morning that if they think one of them is going to move, it would be the Senate bill that actually gives school districts the option, doesn't require them to make changes. But again, no one really knows. So we're going to be, you know, at next Monday, when we pass the final budget and we're ready to print tax bills, we're gonna have to make a decision to, you know, we either hold the process up or we move forward. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Hopefully,
Thanks.
hopefully we'll have more information as we get closer to then on whether or not it's even feasible at that point.
Right.
Anyone else have any other questions or comments on any of those? No? Okay. The contracts for approval, most of these are renewal contracts we've seen before. Are there any that you want to highlight, Sean?
You're very, very right. They're mostly all renewals. I would say that the Kronos annual maintenance contract, that's for our time system. You'll see a big increase there, but the reason you see a big increase there is because we're moving that away from internal data retention to offsite data retention. So the company will be responsible for retaining all the data and so forth, just like we do with our accounting software and some other programs. So again, it's trying to get away from being responsible for holding all the data here in district. So
Okay.
that's why that changes in cost.
And are we making sure, just like we talked about last month, that all of the contracts that are a certain service are, you know, have a line in it about, you know, whether or not, if things were if this pandemic was to get extended and we weren't able to utilize those services, that we have an out and not have to pay for it?
Yes, Mike, Mr. Miller gave us force majeure language, which is incorporated into most, if not all of these, probably not all of them, but very large amount of these contracts, which give us that out, that if the pandemic, it causes us not to be able to function like we normally would, then we would be able to get out of. And it gives us an out, and also gives the other side an out also if they can't do their part because of the pandemic. So yes, we've made sure that we have that information. And
can I ask, and you may not know the answer to this right off the bat, but maybe you can just let me know later. The middle school plays that they didn't get to hold I want to say last school year because I'm thinking in my head it's over, but I guess it's still this school year, that they weren't able to hold. What is the status of that? Because a lot of, you know, they already started, kids worked really hard on that. That contract was to use that play from, you know, the play from Disney for that opportunity. Is that something that they are going to be able to continue to the next year? Is that something, you know, they put money and time and energy? Those kids practiced a long time, and I'd hate to see them not get the opportunity to be able to, you know, perform just because it lapses school year. So I wasn't sure how that worked, but I'm curious, and I'm sure that's not something that it would be on your radar, but if you could find out for me, I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, sure can.
Did anyone else have any questions or comments about any of the contracts? No? Okay. Then next is the PSBA membership renewal. The review PSBA membership renewal 2020-2021 for $15,840.42. It's the same as last year. And I just want to point out, and we've talked about this, you know, on somewhat of an annual basis, that I think we even did a calculation on the value of this and what we get back as far as savings in insurance and other things ends up really covering that fee. And so eliminating this membership wouldn't actually even save any money. And I think we even saw that when we did the numbers the one year, we might even lose money. And so I just want to, you know, while we're kind of being tight in our budget, I just wanted to point that out. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
No.
Okay. And then we have the bid RFP results.
Yeah, so we have a number of bids and RFPs we put out each year at this time for next year's goods that we need. And there's a spreadsheet for each bid and RFP, which shows you the items that we put out to bid and the companies that responded and the amounts that they bid and so forth and the total cost from each one of those. And on the agenda, you can see kind of a summary of each area and the bidder and the amount that each bidder won because they had the lowest bids. And we have in number 10, we have tech ed, metal shop, wood shop, lumber supplies, art supplies in letter E. F is music instruments. And then we have again this year, we have our tire bid through the IU. We also have our paper bid through the IU. And then we have RFPs for our boiler, burner maintenance and tuning, our emergency generator inspection and maintenance, and our elevators. And those three, Kelly worked in a consortium with Quakertown, Palisades, and the tech school, I believe, were the three other entities that we worked in a consortium with to get prices for these items. So we're trying to work together as a group as much as we can and get the best prices. So thank you to Kelly for doing that work.
Any questions or comments from anyone on any of these? No? Okay. Next is bank depositories.
Okay, the bank list is the same list that we have this year and have had for a number of years, and we use all these different institutions in different ways. For example, QNB is our local depository, so any money that runs through our on-site here in the district would have to go through QNB. A lot of our investments will run through the school district liquid asset fund, and also the PLGIT, the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Fund, and Bank of New York Mellon and PNC Bank are thorough, the banks that have to work with the funds, that those funds have to have a bank that works with them, so for the money to flow through. So that's why those banks are listed there, and also Commerce Bank. So, but for the most part, the most work we do is with QNB, the School District Liquid Asset Fund, and the Local Government Investment Trust.
Thank you. I don't see anyone unmuting.
Okay.
Cooperative purchasing participation.
Yeah, this is the same list of cooperative purchasing programs that we shared with the board last year for approval. We use these, all these different entities at different times for different things. For example, PEPM is all about technology. So all the technologies through the PEPM cooperative purchasing program. And then we also like to work with our, as we saw before, our IU Joint Purchasing Council for our paper and for different things, our tires and so forth. We work with our IU for our fuel purchases, both gas, diesel, and the heating oil. So we do a lot of work with the IU, and so these are very helpful programs.
Any questions or comments on these? Okay. End of year payments.
Yeah, so each year we just ask the board to allow us to kind of keep the end of year process moving through June and July, so that we are ready for our auditors to begin at the end of August. I should have said through July and August, so that what we do is when we have bills ready to pay, we will send a listing out to the board and give that to you for a day or so. And if you have any questions or any comments or anything, you get back to us. And if we don't hear anything, we assume we're good to go, and we keep our fiscal year moving, and so that we're able to, get things closed up in time. So I really do appreciate the board's willingness to let us do that each year.
Thank you. And the last thing on our agenda is to seek bids for new buses.
Yeah, so Jessica's here tonight, and she's going to do a presentation on our buses for next year. And I will remind the board that you know, our bus purchase amount of money is one of those lines that we talked about. We would wait and see what, you know, how our local revenues and our state revenues and so forth next year, how they're flowing before we make a decision to purchase buses or not. Jessica will talk about, there is one bus that we do need to move forward with, and it's for special reasons. So we would like to ask you to give us permission to move forward with that. But we want to continue to show you each year, like we have, what the plan is for purchasing and so forth. And then we will move forward if and when the budget allow and the fiscal circumstances allow us to. So I will turn it over to Jessica.
I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So just kind of a recap of what we do every year. We talk about how many home to school routes we have. We have 95 homeschool routes, 44 homeless foster students that we transport, 18 sister school students for 18-19 school year, 57 work study routes, 11 late bus routes we had. We performed 916 athletic or contests and practices. We performed 339 field trips, and we performed 29 summer school routes last year. So the current inventory that we have 77 full-size buses. They consist of 77 and 72 passenger buses. We have 148 passenger bus currently. We have 22 28 to 30 passenger buses. They're mini buses. We have 10 wheelchair buses and 13 vans. Our current fleet usage, we have 95 route vehicles. We have spare vehicles of 20, which is broken up into many different varieties. We have the one mail van that we service. We have 6 sports vehicles and 1 vehicle that we tend to use mostly for training, but it does get used for other purposes as well. Our current fleet age, we have, so as of March of 2020, we have 8 vehicles that are 15 to 19 years old. We have 37 vehicles that are 10 to 14 years old, 23 vehicles that are 5 to 9 years old, and 53 vehicles that are new to 4 years old. So currently 62% of our fleet is less than 10 years old. So we've been moving up the process here. Our fleet's mileage, we have we've got 39 buses that have less than 50,000 miles on that. We have 17 that are over 50 but under 100,000 miles. We have 21 buses that are 100,000 but less than 150,000. 26 that are 150,000 but less than 200,000. We have 17 buses that have between 200,000 and 250,000 miles. And we have 3 that are over 250,000 miles, but they're all still going pretty good. So our plan to replace for this year, we're looking to replace 5 full-size buses. And with those 5 full-size buses, we would replace 4 of them with full-size buses. The 5th bus that we would take out, we would actually replace that with a 48-passenger wheelchair bus. And that is a need for special needs students. We were running shorthanded this year on buses. So that would be the one bus that we really would need to purchase this year if we purchase nothing else. There are 2 minivans that we would be looking to replace. And those are the 60 and the 70. Those are the minivans. And then the top buses would be the 72 passenger buses that would be going out. And what we would basically replace them with likewise, except for the 1. Okay. I know that last time we had talked about the skid steer and what it would look like if we were to purchase that rather than lease that. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen where it says snow removal cost, the contract, the lease, it gives you the year, the school year, and what we actually paid for the usage of the skid steer. So as Carl was telling you in the beginning, we did actually contract at first, and that those people kind of lost their shirts on the deal and chose not to continue to contract. So that's where those two first costs are. In 2017-18, we began to lease because we could not get that contract back again. And you'll see that there are the three costs for the school year for the winter that we did lease the skid steer. So overall, for the past 5 years, we have put out about $40,410 for usage of a skid steer. We did look at the cost of a few different ones. John Deere was the best one that we could find that had the best cost. This is a contracted price. So you'll see down the total price that we would pay would be $60,901.63 if we were to purchase. Looking through the maintenance program that they provided, per year, it would be about $160 to maintenance the skid steer, and every 3 years would be an additional $183 for some other things that need to be done. We would store it in the shop during the winter months when we need to use it, and when we're not actually in use with it, it would be stored into the pole barn that we have existing. So if we were to choose to purchase a skid steer this year, what we would do is we would trade out the full-size buses, but we would not trade out the two vans, van 60 and 70. We would keep the two of those vans in the fleet this year in order to use that cost to purchase the skid steer. If that's a route that we want to go down.
Okay. So I guess board members need to look at where you want to go on this. I'll share, I think it makes sense to purchase it and then you have it forever and then you don't continue to rent it. And then if you need it at any point for any other things, you have it available. And if it's being held in a location where it's being protected, it should last a really long time. And if we're not using it that often and it's really based on the weather, you know, it seems to me that it would hold up really well for a long time if it's sitting there in a, you know, not in the weather. And so that would be my thought. But any other board members who want to weigh in on this?
I was just wondering what the average life is on a skid steer.
That's a good question as well.
I believe that Carl said it was well over 10 years. They're not used heavy, so they could go well over 10 years.
I agree with Mrs. Banas-Clemens. That was what I had said in the last time we had discussed it as well. I feel that it's a good investment, and I think it's something that we would use. I'm not sure about timing though, but otherwise I agree.
Do we know where that quote came from, like which John Deere dealer?
This one I believe was right over on 113.
Plaster equipment. Okay.
Oh.
Oh, 113.
Yeah.
Little, so we should try plaster as well. Because there's a commercial John Deere dealer in the area, and they offer all the services. And I know that, and they do a really nice job over there. If we didn't check with them first.
I will look into that, but we did go off of contracted pricing here.
All right. So, Mrs. Banas-Clemens, are you still on the line?
Yes.
Put it out for bid, just to see what comes back. We know what the contracted price is.
John, what do you think? Do you think that, or Jessica, one of you, do you think that makes? Sorry, I hit the mute button in the middle of talking. Does it make sense to do that and then compare the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, we could put it out to bid and then compare the numbers, and see what it comes back at.
What is the cost of putting it out to bid?
What's that?
What is the cost of putting it out to bid?
Probably $1,200 to $1,500 for advertising.
Okay. And what do you know, in your experience with this kind of equipment, do you expect I mean, is one avenue typically less expensive than the other, or it could go either way?
Well, I'll tell you what we've found. We haven't bought a skid loader, so I can't compare it to that. But what we found when we've tried to bid out vehicles is that many of the dealerships will not respond to our bids because they've got their prices locked in through the state contract. So they just don't even respond. They say, if you want to buy from us, here's our price on the state contract. We're not going to respond to your bid. So we've seen that a lot with vehicles, and I don't know. Like I said, we haven't bought one of these, so I haven't experienced that. But
I'm just wondering if the market is, a little bit hungry, and we might be able to get some better pricing. That's all.
Yep, could be. But we know we need to buy the one bus with the wheelchair lift, so that we have adequate assets for the kids. The skid steer loader was going to kind of fall into that other group of money that with the other vehicles, that if we see that we have the money, we would come back to the board and say, maybe in December, and say, okay, things are looking good. Can we move forward and buy these other vehicles? Or things aren't looking good, so great. Maybe we don't buy this year, and we put everything off a year, and we come back next year at this time and ask about doing another set of vehicles. So unless
I think the difference with the vehicles, right, is if you don't do that, you still have the use of your vehicle that you currently have. With this,
right,
you have to rent something in the meantime. So I think
right.
it's a little bit different of a situation. So
and if we don't buy the skid loader, we will have to lease it again. You're absolutely right. So it would be another $10,000 worth of cost that we would have to spend this year to lease it.
I agree
When do we have to lease? I'm sorry, this is Lisa. When do we have to notify that we would like to lease one? Like, what's our wiggle room as far as holding off until November? Do we have to make that sort of decision before the school year? I don't know. I was just curious about that timeline.
So they are aware that we lease them every year. So they typically have this, the one on hold for us set aside. And we usually do reach out to them usually early October, just because we want to make sure that we have it on property prior to any snow coming.
Right. No, I agree. It makes sense to have our own equipment rather than leasing, and the payback is there within 6 years.
yeah, I think we should just move ahead with it, and not, because if you lease it, you're just throwing out, and you're just buying another year basically.
Right.
So I think if we're gonna do it, we might as well just do it. So where does everybody fall on, it sounds iffy on whether or not it would even be, if it would be cost effective to bid it out. I'd just hate to spend the money and then, but I don't know. Where does everybody fall on this? I
think it's a wise purchase.
Right. So Bill had mentioned the idea of potentially bidding it out and comparing. Do we want to just go with this, or do we want to bid it out and then make that comparison? Is it worth, do we want to take that gamble, I guess?
Well, aren't we hearing that they don't return your bid for information?
That's what we've run into. I'm sorry, Dr. Thompson, that's what we've run into when we've tried to bid out vehicles, like our maintenance trucks and so forth.
Right.
But we haven't bid a piece of equipment like this since I've been here.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I'm just telling you what we've run into
Right.
with vehicles. That's the
What
only
we've
thing
had
I
in the
can.
past. And
Yeah, it's the
and
only thing I
to
can compare
Mr.
it with.
Krause's point, it could be that people are willing. So maybe, do we have the time? Do we have the time to do the bid process? Would that work?
Yeah, I don't think time's an issue. It's more whether or not you want to spend $1,500 it's
Yeah.
whether or not you want to spend the $1,500 and then the prices don't, so the
That's
people who
right.
will be bidding on this are the same, they're the same companies then that you already have this pricing from, right? So they'd be competing, it's the same idea as what you're talking about with the vehicles. It's that
Right.
same kind of pool of companies, right?
Yeah.
Well, then I don't think it makes much sense to bid it out and spend that extra money. If what we're going to get back on a bid is this price we're seeing, right? Does anybody else have other comments on that?
I kind of am leaning that way too, but it's a gamble either way, right? So I guess if everybody wants to go around and
So is it a contracted price from Little's on 113?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is it just like a contracted price from Little's on 313? Otherwise, it would just be a matter of making a phone call to a different dealership to make sure that you're getting a fair price.
There's actually contracted prices through multiple, and we did get a couple of different prices. This was the lowest cost.
On different products, right? Just other makes, different makes.
Other makes, same general principle. It's a skid steer, but different makes and models. Yes.
The John Deere was the best price of the makes that
Correct.
under the state contract that we got prices for.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is, okay, fine, you want to go with a John Deere, that's not a problem. But there's several John Deere dealers in the area, and you should make sure that you're getting the same price from all of them. Or like where you're going to get the best price and the best service contract from, if you want to get from a local John Deere dealer.
Right.
And we would generally be servicing this in-house with our mechanics.
But I believe the question is, could we call a different John Deere dealer to see if we get the same or better price?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's make sure we check with the other local John Deere dealers on this to see whether this price is the best price that we can get from a local dealer. And then if it is, what I hear from the group is that we will move forward with the contracted price if we feel as though it is the best one.
Okay.
Yes, I think that makes sense. Okay.
So just to put it in the summary format, Mrs. Baines-Clemens, we will ask the board next week to go to bid for the bus that we need. We will also then move forward with the process of purchasing the skid steer from next year's budget after we contact a number of local John Deere dealerships to make sure we get the best price for the John Deere skid loader. And then once we get to the winter, when we see where our revenues are, then we'll have another discussion about the rest of the buses. Because the vans will stay with us. The 2 vans will stay with us for another year because of the skid loader. But the other 4 buses we can have a discussion about in the winter. And if we feel that it's a positive scenario that we can move forward, we could ask the board for permission to bid those vehicles then. If that's okay with you.
That sounds perfect.
Great.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay. Then our next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for August 10th. And we have our last public comment for this committee meeting, and then we'll have public comment for the other committee meetings as we get to those. But before we adjourn, are there any comments from the public for the Finance Committee? Emily Smith, it looks like you're unmuted. Are you looking to make a comment? Okay, I'm gonna guess no. Or if you're having technical difficulties, maybe you can click on the chat and just send us a message so we know, or try that avenue. Did I miss anyone? I don't see anyone else unmuted. Does anyone have a comment? Okay, then we'll adjourn finance and move on to the next committee meeting.
You're muted, Mrs. Walters.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You couldn't read my lips? I'm going to call the activities meeting to order. Do we want me to read the statement, public comment statement again?
Why don't you just ask if there's any public comment, and if there is, we'll read the statement.
All right. Is there any public comment before we start the activities committee meeting? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody unmuted. Okay. All right. So we have 2 items tonight. We're going to start with the 2019-2020 school calendar. Dr. Robarchak.
Good evening, everyone. And I'm going to apologize in advance because it is bedtime here for 3 little ones. So if you hear anything, I apologize. But we are bringing forth the revised 2019-20 calendar as per school code, as the school board approves it. And we are making recommendations to make up for the closure that occurred and then the end of the year. So Diane Miller, if I can share my screen. Give me 1 second. There we go. And then you also have a copy of this. Oh, yep, revised June 5th. So basically what we did is in March, we took that week out where it was new instruction. We were providing enrichment and remediation via distance learning. So the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, not officially counting it. So student days or part of the student count. And as we know, those have been provided a waiver to forgive those days. But in regards to the teacher days, if you look at June, the last teacher day would have been June 17th. We have extended that to be June 18th, 19th, 22nd, and 23rd. And I am happy to say that we are going to be utilizing those days to the fullest extent, which is nice because we do have some work to complete. I know that Dr. Scheid is going to be working with the secondary group of teachers and supervisors to work with Ms. Heidi Jacobs and Dr. Benna Kalik in regards to additional curriculum writing with those the groups from the middle school and high school. And at the elementary level, we are proceeding with our literacy implementation and providing teachers with training. The rest of the 5 schools that have not been implementing that program for making meaning and words their way. At the elementary level, on the last day of the 23rd, we will be providing teachers a day to reflect on distance learning and work across, be able to reflect individually with their grade level and then across the board with their grade level partners across the district. So that is what we are doing in those last 4 days. Is a lot of work will be done, a lot of good work that will prepare us as we move into the next school year. But just wanted you to be aware of the changes on the calendar and be able to move it forward for a vote at next week's meeting. And if there's any questions, I'll answer them.
Does anybody have any questions about the calendar? Not seeing anyone.
That's good.
Okay. All right. And then our next item is the PAYS survey results.
Diane, can I have ability to share my screen?
Should be good to go.
Okay. All right, everybody see that? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I think Dr. Bolton may jump in from time to time if you have anything that I'm missing. So we conducted the PAYS survey this year, the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. It's conducted every other year. It's offered at no cost to the school districts in Pennsylvania. You can see the funding is provided through the state programs that are listed on this slide. This year we had I think our best participation we've ever had in the survey. So we had a participation rate of 85%. That means we had 2,007 total students that completed the survey, and it's done in 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. So you can see the numbers of students in each of those grades that participated. There are 5 different areas that are surveyed. The first is alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, antisocial behavior, community and school climate and safety, social emotional health, and very timely for us, this year they also asked a question about sleep. So we have some sleep data for 2019. I should say that the survey results that we received, it was over 100 pages. So we're distilling this down to some of the main points for this presentation this evening. You'll notice on the data slides that I'm going to share that we have the data organized by 2017 Penridge data, 2019 Penridge data, and then also the state 2019 data so that you can see the comparisons. All of the numbers that are shown are in percents. And so this first slide shows you the alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. And you can see that we are making some strides in this area. This is more data on alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, again, showing some improvement. Even though some of these, you know, we don't want any numbers in there, but we are showing some strides. And then after the data slides, I'll just show you some sort of takeaways from each of the data slides. So what we can see in this data is, yes, we are making strides. Our numbers are lower than the state numbers. One of the areas of concern, surprising, is that our students are accessing some of the sources of alcohol are from parents and friends of parents. So that's very concerning, of course. The next area that we looked at is antisocial behavior. So the 3 main areas under this are gambling, being drunk at or high at school, and selling drugs to others. So again, in this area, we see some of the takeaways are that our data is showing a downward trend. Again, our numbers are lower than the state. One of the details in the data is that the gambling that our students are engaging in, it tends to be more like lottery, scratch-off tickets, personal skill games, which they state as, you know, online Xbox with other groups. So those are the areas of gambling. And then the data for being drunk at school, we're mostly seeing that in our 10th and 12th grade students, unfortunately. Next area that we're reporting on is community and school climate and safety. So this definitely shows some areas of concern for us. On this slide, we can see how our students are feeling about the importance of school, their schoolwork, enjoying being in school, and how if they feel safe at school.
Before you move on to Dr. Durr, this is the one slide of this is the one area where our numbers were the most pronounced in terms of going in the negative direction. This is a situation where numbers going down is bad. On most of the slides, numbers going down is good. But like that first line item says, less than 50% of our students answered the question that school is important with either an emphatic yes or a strong yes, which were the top two options of the 5 options they were given. Statewide, the numbers did take a pretty drastic drop. And so there's lots of discussion groups among superintendents as to why across the state these numbers seem to have gone down more than just a little. Sometimes you see, blips up and down, but this is more than blips. And so this is one area, as you look at the 5 main umbrellas, this is the one umbrella that we're going to spend the most time trying to dissect and have conversations with kids and families and teachers about why there could have been this change over the last 2 years. These numbers were pretty surprising to us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So do we think, everything that's been happening across the nation, I think is a pretty good indicator, I think, of why kids are feeling less safe in school. I think it makes sense to see that being a trend with the kinds of things that they're seeing happen across the country.
Yeah, that may very well explain that last one, although remind you that this was done in the fall.
October.
And so you do always thinking about, what are the precipitating actions that have recently happened in a region, because it could impact, like if there was something traumatic that would have happened in Pennsylvania 2 weeks before our kids took the survey, that may very well be on their mind.
Well, I meant more of, I didn't want to say the word, but I meant more because of the shootings and things.
Yes.
That's more of what I was referring to than the more recent events because of the timeline of the survey.
Yeah, and those are the types of things that as we do student focus groups, and you'll see as part of our moving forward plan, one of the things we do with this information is do student focus groups to kind of have a conversation and unpack the numbers a little more deeply for Penridge, taking a look at different grade levels and talking to kids who actually answered it to see why they did that. So yeah, we'll need to dig into these numbers a little deeper.
And there's another slide coming up that has some more data in this area, which again, when you look at kids feeling that teachers praise them, of course, that's concerning to us. That's something that's easy for us to do. So we need to look into that a little bit deeper as well. Seeing drugs at school, being threatened at school. So there's some more data points for those items. So again, as we said, some of the takeaways in this data, we're seeing a decline, but not in a good way. And we know we need to do better in this area. Many of our students do have positive feelings about school, but and one of the other things that wasn't in the data slides, but is in the report, a lot of our students are involved in pro-social activities, things outside of school, clubs, community, family things, faith-based, and that's a protective factor for our students. So the fact that we have high numbers of students involved in those things is a positive thing for us that will help us in this area. Okay, this is the social and emotional health data. This data is sort of remained pretty static, not large changes in these categories. And then on the next slide, you can see a little bit more detail about bullying. So we had 24.3% of our students that said they have been bullied. They have reported bullying. And when then those students were asked why, these were the main reasons. So unfortunately, this is such a sad slide for me, but many of the students are saying that it's the way they look, their size. Those are the 2 biggest areas for bullying. And then then we have social standing, social conflict, and family finance situations that follow. Again, more data on social and emotional health. This is the data related to depression and suicide. Again, not big changes here, but concerning, you know, because we do have some numbers here, so very concerning. Again, the takeaways here, we're definitely lower than the state numbers in all of the categories, mental health categories. Any number in these categories isn't a number that any of us want to see. So this will continue to be a major focus for us and for the district. And then the last data that we had was some new sleep information. So there was one question. I get fewer than 7 hours of sleep per night, and you can see that overall we're lower than the state, but our 10th and 12th graders are higher than the state. So those are some pretty significant numbers there of less than 7 hours of sleep for our 10th and 12th grade students. So I want to talk a little bit about next steps. The survey initially was shared with all of our school guidance counselors. So a lot of the recommendations here come directly from them. We also work in collaboration with the Penridge Healthy Communities Healthy Youth Coalition with Lee Rush and Lois Dodson. So as Dr. Bolton mentioned earlier, we're going to dig into some of this data a little bit deeper with some student focus groups and really see why our students are answering and feeling the way that they are in some of those categories, so that we can raise community awareness. This isn't just a school issue, these things, this is a community and family. We have to have everybody involved. So we also want to share the PAYS results with our wellness teachers, look at our curriculum, make sure we're teaching the right things in the right grades. The third bullet on here, the highest overall risk factor that we showed was low commitment to school. You know, kids that are not feeling that it's meaningful, not feeling connected to school. So we need to do a better job there. The data about, you know, teacher praise, that should not be there at all. That's an easy one that we need to work on, and we need to make sure that we're doing more of that and that kids feel that they're getting, you know, positive feedback for the work that they do. Bullying definitely is concerning. You know, we want to make sure, one of the things that one of our counselors pointed out, that students feel like as they move up through the grades, that there's less adult response to bullying. So we want to make sure that that's not happening and that students feel supported in every grade. The highest scores in protective factors, as I said, it was that family involvement and pro-social involvement. So we know that that's important, and we want to make sure that parents understand how important that is and what an impact that they can have, that their values and their expectations for their kids really will make an impact as they get older and become adolescents. And then one of the final next steps, just in our initial look at this data, is, you know, where students are getting alcohol and prescription drugs and those sources. So maybe some education for the community and families about safe management of those things. But again, these are just some initial first steps. Once we get those focus groups and dig into the data a little bit more, I'm sure there will be more to come. So I will take any questions that you might have. No questions?
Hi, Dr. Dare. This is Adrienne King. Can I ask a question right now?
Mrs. King, we're gonna, this is an opportunity for the board at this moment. There will be public comment very soon that you could ask a question at that point. Thank you for hanging on.
I will wait. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Dara, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this point, is there any public comment?
That
Adrian, would
wasn't a
you?
long wait.
I know. Adrian King, would you please offer your comment? We'll start with you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm in my car. But I wanted to ask a question to Dr. Dare. So I heard you speaking about like your data, and I wanted to know where any bullying that's related to race would be captured in your data. And the other question is if your numbers on that, I'd like to understand what those numbers are, and if you have that, sort of what actions are being taken as a result of that.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. King, there is data. There is a question specifically to race. I don't have those numbers at our fingertip because we only listed the top 5 and it wasn't among the top 5. So I will have Dr. Gerd look into that information and shoot you and the school board that answer so that we can get you the correct information from the PACE survey.
All right, thanks. I don't think it will ever be in your top 5 just because of the amount of diversity or lack of diversity. So I think you should sort of look at it from a different context rather than just saying the top 5, because I think if you look at it disproportionate to the total number that you're getting, it's never going to be in your top 5. So I would advise that you look at it a little bit closer and then bring it up because we do know it's happening. Well, we do.
Okay, thank you. That was a very good point. Does anybody else have a public comment? Okay.
Is this public comment?
Offer a comment?
This is Adrian again. I'm sorry. Nobody else has anything to say. Is this public comment just about the whole meeting? I wasn't on for the first part, but I understood that Dr. Bolton had addressed the statement that was sent out. Can I give public comment on that now too? Or?
Certainly.
Oh, okay. All right. So I understood that you addressed the letter that you sent out, and you said that your feedback that you had received was positive on that. And so I just wanted to give sort of a different perspective on that. Being a Black family in the district, I felt that letter, and I sent the same email to you. And I sent it to the board. I felt that it was totally out of touch with the event at hand that's going on, and what the Black community is dealing with. And I don't feel that the district offered any support for the Black community or your Black students. And I don't feel like the district offered a call to the school district to reinforce, that there's no tolerance for any type of racially incited events, or any type of just call to action. Right now the world is in a state where everybody's trying to call to action to how do we put an end to racial injustices, and the note that you sent out was totally silent on that. And so I will say that as a Black family in the community reading that, it didn't resonate with me. And I really wish that the district would have focused a little bit, or maybe had more diverse eyes look at the letter before you sent it out, just to make sure that it would have spoken, to what your Black community needed, in addition to bringing the whole district together and giving them a call to action.
And Mrs. King, we do recognize the email you sent. We do appreciate your advocacy in this area. I'm going to email you my statement since you weren't able to hear it, because I did not characterize the feedback that I received as positive. How I characterized the feedback that I received is that the common themes were around how to support our families, listen to our students, and offer ideas on training for students, staff, and community. I never used the word positive because there was, as you said, mixed feedback, both positive and critical in terms of that statement. And that's the wonderful thing about this community, that we have that conversation and that people share their thoughts. But I will email you my statement directly so that you can read it.
Thank you for that.
Okay, is there any other public comment for the activities meeting?
Yes, this is Kathy Padva.
Hi, Kathy. What is your comment?
Hi, just two minor things. I joined a few minutes late and I wasn't able to get the agenda at the beginning, so it was a little dark for me to see what was coming. If there's a way that I could find the agenda in advance of both committee meetings, that'd be helpful. And then someone made a comment that you could, post something in the chat, but at least for me, the chat's disabled. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I misspoke because I just noticed that too.
Ms. Pavda, all of the board doc links and all of the agendas are posted the Friday before our meetings. So these agendas have been available since Friday afternoon on our board docs. And so if you need some support in terms of access to those, if you just send an email out to me, I'll have somebody call you to walk you through that. So for future meetings, you're able to see that. But those agendas are, and we apologize about the chat. That suggestion was made because we weren't sure somebody was unmuted and we couldn't hear them, but chat has been disabled. So we're glad we could hear you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments this evening? Okay. Seeing none, the activities meeting is adjourned.
Okay, shall I call the Personnel Committee to order?
Please.
All right, so I shall call it to order. Should I read policy 903 regarding public comment?
Let's just check if there is any public comment since we just came out of one cycle of it.
Is there any public comment before we start personnel meeting? Okay, seeing none. Renewal of contract with Independence Blue Cross is our first item. Does anybody, is Dr. Bolton, are you going to comment on that, or Mr. Dahlbert?
I believe Ms. McHale, you're going to walk us through these items, and then Mr. Dahlbert will chime in if there's some money questions.
Okay. I can. So on page 2, I'm trying to bring that up. I could share that with you possibly.
That would be great.
Okay.
Do you want me to share it?
I believe she has access now.
Okay.
Okay. So the Independence Blue Cross contract, if you look at the 1-year contract area, that's the 3rd year of our current contract for 2021. They are offering, in addition to that, a 3-year renewal, which has a reduction in the 2021 school year, and then again holds the 19-20 cost of $2.76 for the 21-22 school year, and then an increase to $2.83 per contract for 22-23. Overall, this 3-year contract renewal represents a savings of $9,792 based on the current membership, which of course fluctuates up and down depending on who is coming in and out of the contract, but that represents the group billing factor as it stands now. Another point that I wanted to make with this contract is the medical terms do meet the CBAs, and it does take the contract out through the end of the teacher's contract, which is June of 2023. So we felt that this was, it was a good contract. It's saving us some money by doing the 3-year renewal now and holding the 19-20 rate through 2021, and then again, back in 21-22. So we would like to move forward with the contract for IBC for those additional 3 years.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see, I just lost my meeting page. Here we go. All right, moving on, Mrs. McHale, to Ms. McHale, to Delta Dental contract?
Okay, so the Delta Dental contract that you see up on the screen, this is our deposit agreement. And the deposit is basically a pre-fund premium that is reconciled monthly. And if it exceeds the cost of claims during the quarter, the difference is then paid to Delta. If the cost of the claims is lower during the quarter, then the difference is paid back to PSD. You'll see under number 3 that the administrative fee is $4.14 per contract. That is an increase of 12 cents per contract. It's a nominal increase. Represents a little under 2,000. It's $1,182.24. It is a nominal increase. They do provide exceptional service. However, that being said, because they are starting to show a little bit of an increase, our broker did take this out to several contractors who were unable at this time to do an exact benefit comparison with Delta. In addition to meeting our network of dentists, they felt very much short of Delta's network of dentists. However, at least 2 of those providers indicated that they are going to aggressively recruit in the next year and see if they could at least come close to matching our benefits and our network of dentists, which is important because then that's going to bring down your disruption to your members. So we intend to follow their recruitment through the year. They felt that this year they couldn't do it because of COVID. They were having trouble contacting dentists, putting out their proposals to them and having them received back and reviewed by their company as well. So that back and forth between the provider and the companies just wasn't happening in that March, April, May time period that we would need that to happen. So for that reason, they were unable to provide, again, a good match this year. They just weren't a good fit. But we would like to, again, aggressively go after some of these other companies for next year. We feel that there could be a cost differential that we could bring to you for the 21-22 fiscal year. So are there any other questions? Go ahead.
This termination says it's a 2-year contract?
It does, but they have language in their main contract which states that it's a 60-day cancellation.
I understand. Okay, so we could move away from it if we found a more competitive situation with 60 days notice.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it works with dental contracts, they usually, if you don't pay your premium, they're canceling you the next month. If they know that you're not, if they know that you're not interested in renewing and you clearly indicate that by way of not paying that premium for that month, they will accept that.
I'm not seeing a penalty for that either. Is there a penalty?
No,
and they
there
just
is no penalty
cancel
for
you?
that. And
Okay.
I do have that in the hands of Mr. Miller to review our main contract with them. Again, this is just the deposit agreement that needs your signature.
Okay. Great. Does anybody have questions or comments? Okay, so go ahead.
I believe next was stop loss.
Yes, stop loss.
So with the stop loss, this is always an interesting back and forth. It's sort of a dance that occurs between the carriers, and initially they came out very strong initial interest. Once they received our medical claims and details of our high claimants, they backed off. So you're going to see all those people at the bottom from Nationwide down completely just, we can't be competitive, so we're going to drop off. The biggest competitor was Tokyo Marine, who was back and forth with Highmark. Highmark is our incumbent, and in the end, they reduced their fee a little bit to keep the business. We feel that this is a strong renewal, and it works well with the IBC contract because they do have like a symbiotic relationship. They are very much aware of our claims. We have a lot of high claimants. Right now we have 8. which is a lot for stop loss. There's a lot of unknowns with our claimants. We have chronic conditions that flare up now and then. So there's a lot of that unknown. Highmark is not implementing what we call lasers. Lasers are specific deductibles that would be assigned to maybe 1 or 2 claimants because of their condition being unknown and that it may fluctuate up or down. Initially, one of the carriers was looking at placing lasers on one of our claimants, but then backed off. That made them a little more competitive, but still they were shaky in that area. They just weren't sure. So having Highmark come in a little bit lower than they were initially, and having that relationship with them and Blue Cross, it gives us a lot of stability and confidence in our stop loss, especially again having those high claimants in those high numbers. So our recommendation would be to, of course, remain with Highmark, the incumbent.
Does anybody have questions or comments about that? Okay. I think next is the Safe Schools contract.
Okay, Safe School. So we currently contract with Safe Schools to do all of our safety trainings for staff, harassment, Act 126, some safety trainings by way of handling chemicals, things like that. So we use them for a wide variety of reasons other than just the mandatory trainings. This particular addendum to that contract is for student modules. It's a student collection specifically for harassment training that would be delivered to the freshman incoming class of 2021 and 21-22. This this collection of student works is budgeted in the HR budget for the 2021 school year. As you can see, it's not a high cost item, but we had anticipated and placed that in the human resource budget.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Does anybody have any questions or need clarification on that? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I believe we're back to public comment. Is there any public comment? So I can't see everybody on the screen. Can anybody else see that there's anybody unmuted?
No one unmuted, Dr. Thompson.
Okay. Okay. This is why I didn't see Miss McHale. She was further down, and I'm like, where'd she go? Okay. So that we are done then with personnel. The next personnel committee meeting is August 3rd, and we are adjourned.
School board members, I have 8:13 on my calendar. A reminder that there is an executive session tonight that you have a separate link for. And if you would click on that at 8:20, so we'll give you a 7-minute break to stretch your legs, use the restroom, or whatever you need to. So, all right. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you in a few minutes. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.